Welcome to a crossover edition of a podcast featuring Hammer Territory and Mets'd. You would imagine in the middle of a big-time playoff atmosphere kind of series, half of this podcast is happy, half of this podcast is not as happy. That was going to be the way it went, no matter what the result was on this Tuesday evening, with the Braves getting a 5-1 win. My name is Brad Rowland. I am part of Hammer Territory alongside Steven Tolbert. Hello, Steven. We talk all the time. How are you?
Brad, how's it going, buddy?
I'm good. And the Mets'd guys are here, Mark and James.
Hey.
The less excited duo.
Yeah, was really hoping this was going to be a little bit different of a post-game reaction coming from us, but you guys really handed it to us. It was not a good game by the Mets in almost any facet of it, and that's a tough way to start the series with the context that we have of the Mets and the Braves late in September. Didn't love that.
Yeah, it's, you guys said you figured it'd be something. Mark just said figured it'd be something different. But the worst part about every Mets fan watching this game is that this feels like very much more of the same. And now I think that those feelings were a little bit pervasive before this game, but every Mets fan was like, no, this is different. We don't want to think those thoughts again. And now, because of the way this game started, because of the way this game ended, that is the front of mind. I can speak for basically every single Mets fan right now. That's all I can think about. I'm sure it's all Mark can think about. I'm sure it's all any Mets fan watching this or listening to this can think about right now. And that is a horribly and scary thought.
Yeah, that tracks.
From the Braves' perspective, all year long we've said if this team scores, they win. And, they've got one of the best ERA, the second best ERA in baseball as a team. They've struggled all year being able to score runs. And when they score, they win. And they scored 5 runs tonight. And, the pitching was outstanding like it normally is. And it really is that simple for them. If they score 3, 4, 5 runs in a game, they win the game typically. And so that's the key for them. And obviously, they took care of business tonight.
On the vibe side of things, I had that thought that you guys might say that about how the Mets feel given the recent history. I will say, coming in, the pressure's all on the Braves, right? The deficit is what it is. I know that maybe it doesn't feel that way to the Mets, having been in the position they've been in the last couple of years, but they're kind of in the driver's seat here, and the Braves have to win. The Braves have to win these games, or they're just going to be dead. That's going to be the stakes for them. And, the famous adage is like, you can't make a statement and can't sweep a series unless you win game one. They won game one, but it's still, we'll get into it later, I'm sure, but the pressure's kind of still on the Braves. Even though this is kind of a comfortable win in some respects, the Mets are still the team ahead. The Mets are still in control of this thing to at least some extent, even if I'm sure, judging by the reaction from Mark and James, it does not feel that way necessarily on a Tuesday.
I got to give a little shout out to my cousin Ted. We were texting during the game, and he was saying how this Mets team all year has kind of played with house money. They've been playing a lot loose. Feels like they got nothing to lose because there was no expectations. Tonight was the first time, at least in my opinion, and my cousin's as well, where it felt like the Mets felt the pressure. It felt like the Mets knew they had something to lose, where these previous games playing the Phillies and everybody else, they were doing a lot of chasing, even chasing the Braves and the Diamondbacks and the Padres at some point. But now this game against the Braves, it felt like things in their brain, at least for a little bit, changed, where they started to feel the pressure more than they have all year. And that is not something I was hoping to see tonight.
I also think that weirdly, the Mets off day that they had yesterday on Monday killed them, because this Mets team has been playing day after day after day. I think it was just 14 straight days or 17 straight days they had the game, and they had to deal with the Lindor injury in stride. They had to deal with everything happening in stride, those blown saves last weekend against the Phillies. And this last 7 straight days at Citi Field, it was just momentum. There was no thinking. There was just playing next day, at bat, pitcher. And now, similar, building off what Mark said, like there was a moment of thought, and like this moment of like really like, oh wow, we're really doing it, we're really in this spot. Maybe possibly a little bit of like reading the press clippings. I know Mark and I are probably reading the press clippings too. Hell, we kind of were some of the press clippings the other day, where and then it's just like now the realization happens. You're like, okay, now this is like the ultimate moment. You have to dig deep, because Chris Sale's on the mound the next game, whenever it happens, and you have to basically win it to secure all the good things that happened this season.
Well, and that's the fascinating part of this series, is that we don't know when the next game is going to be played. There's a hurricane coming at some point in the next 2 days. And so winning game one, game two might not be till like Monday. We have no idea when game 2 of the series is going to be. So getting off to winning game one was for the Braves, of course, it was just of massive importance. I mean, they could not afford to lose game one. Honestly, it was. I agree with Brad. It was way more important of game for the Braves probably than the
Yeah.
Mets. Even the Mets side, I know they're dealing with a lot of demons. They're dealing with 2022 and all the bad thoughts that came from that series. But just from the standing standpoint, the Braves had to have this game. I mean, they had to have this game.
I know you guys were talking about that. It feels like the pressure's on the Braves, and you can see mine and James's reactions to everything that's being said, and we're just so incredibly a ball of stress right now. As good as we felt on Sunday night, it's completely gone right now. It does not feel the same. You guys just do this to us all the time. So do you actually feel any pressure? Because it doesn't feel like you do at all.
No, I will say it's been, and I know you guys don't want to hear this, it's been a very angsty Braves season, like throughout. I know they've been in kind of decent shape the whole way, but all the injuries they've had, like it's been like nothing has gone right for the Braves all year long. So it may not feel like it's supposed to be angsty, but it's been really angsty all year. And coming into this, like they've been playing really well recently as well. Like it doesn't feel like they probably should be with their roster, but they keep winning series. Then you look at the standings and they've lost ground in the last 6 weeks to the Mets and the Diamondbacks because they've been playing so well. As you guys know, the Mets have been so hot for so long that the Braves can't seem to make up any ground. So they kind of came in, like we all know the deal here. The Braves have to win the series, so they're going to be going home. So yeah, there's some pressure, but I guess once you take a 3-0 lead and you kind of realize it's the Mets, and all the recent history kind of seeps in, I'm sure maybe we had a little bit of opposite reaction, but I don't know about Steven. I didn't feel good about this one until it was 5-0. And even then, like nothing is safe in a high stress game. It's baseball. You guys know how this is. It's like until the final out, nobody's exhaling. And even then it's like, oh, by the way, they got to do this again tomorrow. Well, maybe tomorrow, maybe doubleheader Monday, whatever it's going to be, like you guys said. But no matter what happens, it's like, all right, they got one. Now they have to get the next one. Whereas the Mets kind of have a little bit more wiggle room.
I didn't sit down to watch a pitch until Jimenez came in the 8th inning. That was the first time I actually sat on my couch to actually watch a pitch. So no, I never felt good about this game until the game was over, quite honestly. And in terms of like stress, it is funny, like relative to expectations, because the Mets, I feel like the Mets are playing with house money a little bit because no one really expected them to win anything this year. This was always going to be kind of a bridge year for them. They went for it big in 23. It didn't work. They kind of, spun it back a little bit. And, for the Braves, the expectation is always to win a World Series. Even with the injuries, you might think with the injuries that changes. But like for the fan base, especially when you have the, basically the number one pitching staff in baseball and have all year, like the expectation is at the very least to make the playoffs. And so, yeah, I mean, our stress level has been through the roof for most of the season, and it hasn't helped that the Diamondbacks, the Padres, and the Mets have been like the 3 hottest teams in baseball since the All-Star break. Like Brad said, the Braves have been able to gain no ground despite playing really well for about 6 weeks, and that's just added to the stress. So yeah, Braves fans have been, I would say, highly stressed over the last, all year really, but especially over the last 6 weeks or so.
But this too, like just to finish that thought, We've all been circling this Met series for 6 weeks, probably. I'm sure you guys have too. It's like, all right, it's probably going to come down to this series in late September. We all kind of understand that. And if the teams are close, everyone has this big red circle on this series. So that maybe, I guess, swings a little bit of the vibes of this thing, because no matter what happened, unless the Braves totally collapsed, it was going to be a chance this week, and winning game 1 of the series that kind of, I guess, improves that chance.
And it was even only until our big winning streak 2 weeks ago where we actually got ahead of you guys in the standings consistently. Like, we have been weirdly chasing you. Like, you talk about, we've been playing so well and can't gain ground. That's how it felt from our perspective for the last 3 full months. Because the Mets have the best record in baseball since June 1st. The Mets have the 5th best record in baseball since the All-Star break. And we're still like, why? How could we be a game and a half behind the Braves still? And like, thankfully, we won the 9 out of 10 last week, and then we just won the 6 out of 7 this week. So like, okay, we're ahead by 2 games. But those 2 games felt monumental compared to where the rest of the season's been, how these National League wildcard standings have shaken out through the second half.
And I think it's also like important for Mets fans too, like a little bit of a heat check, because again, we're nervous, we're stressed. Again, deja vu, PTSD, whatever you want to call it, like we're having it right now. But this team really has stepped up a lot all year. There's been a lot of big games for this team. There's been a lot of times me and James have said there are must-win games. Way earlier in the season, the Mets step up. They do it. Not that our opinion really matters on what a must-win game is or not. But this team has stepped up before. Schwellenbach's like a good pitcher. I think a lot of times, too, people get caught up in the narrative of a rookie pitcher pitching in a big game. You don't find out these guys are dogs until they actually step up in those moments. This is Schwellenbach's big moment. He stepped up. Severino did not for us. The offense completely crumbled for the Mets in tonight's game. But at the same time, like, once in a while, you can tip your cap and be like, they beat us. There's nothing that the Mets did in this game that gave me the appearance of what, like, Mets fans like to say, like, the choke, besides just simply not hitting. Like, 5 runs is a game that you can win. This was a winnable game from the pitching side of things. It was just the bats got shut down because Schwellenbach was just simply better.
He was. And he seemed to get better as the game went on. Like, as you guys built the lead, like, it seemed like he was growing stronger and stronger. And the last time we faced Schwellenbach that Saturday in Citi Field, he was good differently because he was just slider after slider and everybody was swinging and missing. This one, he was so comfortable with the lead. He was like, hit it, hit it, hit it. You guys played great defense. I was watching with my roommate who watches 3 baseball games a year, maybe if that. And he's like, the Braves have really impressed me with their defense. I was like, shut up. Don't say these things out loud anymore. I'm done with this. But like, the Mets were hitting the ball well. The 2, 3, 4, and 5 hitters combined for for doing the quick math, 15 for the Mets. But Brandon Nimmo had 3 hard hit balls. Mark Vientos hit that home run, hit another ball in the screws. Nimmo hit that ball down the line, and that was the 7th or 8th, where if Olsen doesn't get a glove on there, you're suddenly looking at 2nd and 3rd, 1 out, the heart of the Mets lineup looking at coming up in a 3-run game. It's like it just
that's when I stood back up.
There you go, exactly. Yeah, because it felt like it was tense for those moments. But even as the game weirdly, I think, felt out of reach for Mets fans, in a much more real sense, it wasn't that out of reach. We just couldn't really muster up anything. We couldn't string hits together. We only had 4 hits in general in this game. You can't win a game with 4 hits when the other team has 5 runs. You can't do it.
Let me ask you guys something, the Mets guys. So, like, from my perspective, it feels like it's like a house money year for the Mets. Like, because I didn't expect them to do much. Most people didn't expect them to do much. They got off to that horrible start. I think you guys were like 11 games under 500 in like the early part of June or something like that. A lot of people kind of wrote you guys off, and I'm one of them, to be honest. I wasn't thinking about the Mets at all. So from your perspective, from Mets fans' perspective, does it still feel like a house money year, or is it the fact that you're already here and now in the playoffs, like expectations have flipped?
You got to ask me that in November. I can't answer that question in September. Because right now the crazy Mets fan brain is telling me, as much as this season has been surprising and better than we expected, I'm still going to be heartbroken if we don't make the postseason. Like, this season has been so great. It has to end with a postseason berth. It has to end with some sort of run. It would leave a bad taste in our mouth for what overall, like, for the grand scheme of the Mets and their future, would be a successful, good season. But I'm also tired of saying that, and I would like an actual successful, good season for once. It's tough to answer on September 24th.
I'll be way more dramatic than Mark because we've tasted the forbidden fruit over these last few months now. Like, we've been in a playoff spot. Again, the best record in baseball since June 1st. It would now totally flip, and the expectations have now overcome me. And I think I would be very disappointed if this team didn't, especially because, like we opened with, we always knew for 3 straight months it was coming down to this exact series against the Braves in Atlanta. 3 games against the Braves in Atlanta. The Braves are missing most of their best players. Like, there's not much of an excuse right now. On paper, you probably very much have a better team. Definitely not better pitching, definitely not a better bullpen, but 1 through 9, you should really be able to hit with these guys. And the fact that this is how they showed up after the first game, it's really hard not to get these horribly terrifying flashbacks.
Yeah, I mean, before we talk a little bit more, because obviously there's a few more games to talk about too coming up and some more little itty bitty details, let's run a quick break and we'll be right back.
I love a great deal, but I'm not going to run sprints in the outfield just to save a few bucks. It has to be easy. No hoops, no BS. With Mint Mobile, it really is that easy to get wireless for $15 a month with the purchase of a 3-month plan. Purchase and activation is super easy too.
To get started, go to mintmobile.com/territory. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can use your own phone with any Mint Mobile plan and bring your phone number.
To get this new customer offer and your new 3-month premium wireless plan for just $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/territory. That's mintmobile.com/territory. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/territory.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on their first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details.
All right, we are back as part of this ongoing crossover edition of Hammer Territory and Mets'd. Please go ahead and subscribe to both of these podcasts, even if you want to hate listen to one of them, which is probably the majority of both audiences. You can support us by supporting our fellow Foul Territory guys. So even if it just feels dirty, I get it, but go ahead and do it for us. It would be very much appreciated. I guess we could keep going on the rest of the weekend. I know we kind of mentioned the potential of the weather. Should we talk about the weather for a second? Because
Yeah.
it's really a chance to ruin everything, and I feel terrible about that. And I would even if the Braves had lost tonight, I would still say the same thing. But there's a chance Thursday might be a total washout with the way the projections are, and Wednesday, if they don't get the game in when it's supposed to start, we joked about it earlier, but it really could be like a doubleheader on Monday, and nobody wants that, especially because even if it's the team that wins it in that instance, if it's a battle for one playoff spot, etc., they got to turn around and play on Tuesday in a 3-game series when you just had to go absolutely forgive this speech balls to the wall on Monday in a doubleheader for your season, and then play on Tuesday. Nobody wants to do that on either side, I'm very sure. So, I mean, I'm not sure what even the takeaway is other than just pray for no rain, at least for one of these. Got to get one of these 2 games in, right? On Wednesday.
Yeah,
and
we're
Thursday?
looking at 81% rain at 7 p.m., 99% rain at 8 o'clock, 77 at 10, 92% at 11 for tomorrow. It doesn't sound
good?
like we're playing baseball. I went to school in the South. It rains a little bit different down there, and I think a hurricane might be a little bit different than the normal rain we're used to during a baseball game the occasional times. Doesn't seem like these games are going to happen, which is probably the worst that could happen for the Mets right now, I think. I don't know. I hate the idea of the doubleheader on Monday. That, to me, is taking a nightmare and just extending it another week longer. I don't want that.
There's also this weird question of now what would each of these teams do this weekend? Are you holding back some pitching? Because if let's say the next scheduled starter for the Mets is David Peterson, then it would be Sean Manaea in the last game of this series. Do you not pitch those guys on Friday because you want both of them to pitch on Monday? How do you handle this? And the Braves are supposed to pitch Sale on Wednesday and then Max Fried on Thursday. Does both teams still need to win the games that they'll be playing, but then also the game against each other could wind up being the most important and you're on less time. And I don't know where the Braves pitching depth right now is. I know it's not tremendous, all the injuries you guys had. The Mets isn't that great either behind the 5 guys who've been pitching every 5th day for them. And even that kind of gives me some agita as well. So how much do you hold back? Then are guys taking a full week off before they go on the mound? This would be a once in a lifetime thing for all of these managers and players here to wait and see how the strategy will be for a possible tie-breaking doubleheader.
Well, the interesting thing for the Braves is that they held Sale back for tomorrow's game. So originally the conversation in Braves country was, do you pitch Sale on Tuesday, tonight's game, so that he can pitch on Sunday in a game 162 scenario where you needed that game to win to make the playoffs? They didn't do that. They held him back for Wednesday's game, which is now interesting because if you have to play Monday, that means Sale for the Braves would be available on normal rest to pitch a Monday game. So, the team and the manager and everybody in the organization, quite honestly, they caught a lot of flack for not having Sale pitch tonight. Because now, obviously when he pitches in this series, it's going to be the last time he pitches. And funny enough, if the season gets extended to Monday, then that's not the case. Then Sale could very much pitch on Monday. So I think listening to you guys, my guess is the Braves are a little better set up for that potential of having to play on Monday because Sale would be available on regular rest to do it. And also they have Ronaldo Lopez, who's supposed to come off the IL Thursday, who could also potentially pitch a game. So if they had to pitch both of those guys, say they had to play a doubleheader on Monday, which obviously is the nightmare scenario, they could potentially pitch both of those guys on Monday on normal rest. So I think the Braves are probably a little better set up for that eventuality than the Mets are, but nobody wants. I mean, I have tickets for tomorrow's game, so I really don't want that game canceled. But the weather forecast is just abysmal.
Yeah, it's fully opposite for the Mets because if we play tomorrow but they get rained out on Thursday, then you guys miss Manaea. And if we play Monday, he'll pitch on Friday. So you then wind up missing him completely. So we'll get your best pitcher twice, and you will never see our best pitcher. So yeah, exact
and the dirty
nightmare scenario for the Mets.
And the dirty secret is the Braves, I believe, even including today, are 500 when Chris Sale does not pitch and 22-7 when he does for the season. So essentially they are as average as could be without Chris Sale, and pretty awesome when Chris Hill, which is logical. He's the Cy Young frontrunner. It's not like that's a huge secret, but they've been pretty mediocre when he's not pitching. And that's we referenced it earlier with Schwellenbach being so good today, and I'm sure Steven and I weren't terribly surprised. He's been nails for most of this season.
He's awesome.
But still, it was the biggest start of his life, and he goes out there, especially given the mostly local controversy, but still local controversy about not pitching Sale tonight. It makes you look a lot better when your rookie goes out there and throws 7 1-run innings against a competent offense. So, like, I don't know. Maybe the Braves will be proven right. I actually candidly didn't like it, and I said as much on the show. If Sale was healthy, I would have pitched him today. But it looks like that's going to work out, at least for the short term. But, I mean, the weather talk is boring. It does matter. We had to do it. We didn't want to talk about the weather, but it's like it really – if it wasn't a hurricane, it wouldn't be a story. But it's a hurricane, so here we are.
The one thing that would help with the weather is that hopefully Francisco Lindor would be able to then play in 2 out of the games in this series, because the way that he looked walking in today, I caught a lot of flack on Twitter for saying he looked stiff, but he didn't even come in the game. So, I mean, he might still be a little stiff, a back injury serious. At least that's my silver lining. If they were to play a doubleheader on Monday, Francisco Lindor, that's the best chance he has to probably play the rest of the year, would be 2 games on Monday. And they would arguably be the 2 most important games of the series. There's also like the weird thing going on right now, and you mentioned like Schwellenbach being picked for the Mets and just like managerial decisions getting undermined or talked about a little bit. Mendoza's been a guy who's been moving people around so much today. And I don't know if you guys notice it as much as Braves fans, but us Mets fans, seeing Starling Marte hitting third, coming up twice with men on base, multiple men on base, and having some of the worst at-bats possible that we've seen, really discouraging, especially because like we said, we had opportunities at time to get back into this game and just kind of let it off the hook.
Yeah, it just doesn't really seem to make sense from the Mets perspective, but they continue to do it. Not only hitting him in prominent spots in the order consistently, even though, again, he's played this year, not hit for much power, not really hit well at all in general recently, and then also continues playing him in the outfield. I understand that Jesse Winker is a bit of an adventure in the outfield, so you don't want to play him there either. The Mets have an embarrassment of riches at specifically designated hitter, but that throw home from Marte in the 3rd inning allowed the Braves to get extra bases. It was ill-advised. It wasn't close to getting out Michael Harris, who has amazing speed at home, on that single that from Albies. So it was kind of a compounding of issues for Marte, like overall game after, like as this game went on, play after play, where, again, speaking from Mark and I's perspective and other Mets fans in their lives, like it just didn't really ever seem like he was someone that was ready to make a big impact in this game. And multiple times he was thrust into being one of the most quintessential players in it.
What's that saying? The ball finds you. The ball always finds. Like, I mean, for Braves fans' perspective, I'm sure people yelling at their phones right now, listening to us. It's been Orlando Arcia for the Braves for the last 2 weeks, who's probably their worst hitter, and it feels like every time they have a big at bat, it's him, and he's been a disaster. So we identify with you in solidarity on that one, I suppose.
At least he's hitting 9.
I'll say this about Severino. I didn't think he actually pitched as bad. Like that one inning where it got away from him. It was a swinging bunt by Orlando that ended up as an error. I'm not even sure the error was his fault. His catcher got in the way as he was trying to throw it. And then, Michael hit a rope double. That was a real hit. But then after that, like Ozzie had a broken bat, little ground ball single. Laureano had a broken bat, ground ball single. He didn't get crushed. Michael came back and hit the homer off him after that. But I don't know. I didn't think I thought Severino looked better and pitched better than maybe his line is going to end up. It looks like he gave up 4 runs in 4 innings and didn't pitch great. I will say the Braves did a really good job of getting his pitch count up. They laid off a lot of those sweepers, which to me was the key to the game. The Braves have so many right-handed hitters in their lineup that I was really worried about that fastball sweeper combo just devastating them all night long. And they were able to lay off it quite a bit tonight and got his pitch count up. He was at 80-something pitches in the 4th inning. I actually thought that was a bigger key to the game than the couple of the runs the Braves scored. Because again, I don't think Severino pitched as bad as maybe some of those hits made it look.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of got Spencer Stridered there a little bit. We got a couple soft hits that dropped. Like, he didn't have his command, and I'm sure James will give us some more numbers here on his whiffs and stuff like that. But overall, it wasn't a good start, but it also wasn't a bad start, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, this has kind of been the issue with Severino. Not the issue because he's had a tremendous season. He's been one of the reasons, the main reason the Mets are even in this position. But I've been saying this to Mark and on our show for a few weeks now. Severino just, as we got to this point in the season, has no bag against the lefties. And I could feel it immediately in that first at bat of the game to Michael Harris. When it was, he had him down 1-2 immediately, and it got to be like an 8-9 pitch at bat. And it was just fastball after fastball after fastball. He didn't really seem to trust any of his other pitches against the lefties. He didn't throw one changeup in this game. And overall, he only threw 3 pitches that weren't forcing fastballs to lefties the entire game. And 2 of those 3 came against Michael Harris. And one of those 3 was a cutter that Keith Hernandez lamented on the broadcast, didn't cut at all, just spun right up the top of the zone. And that was the one Harris laced for the double for the first run of the game. So while, again, it felt like Sevy got BABIP'd a lot, that hit by Laureano, I'll never comprehend how that ball made to the outfield, rolling off his bat, kind of hitting it twice. But
it hit the bat twice. It hit the bat twice.
This happened in the Mets-Phillies game last weekend, too, in Citizens Bank Park, where by the time Severino got to his third at-bat against Bryce Harper, he seemed to have nothing left. Harper homered off the changeup. Severino threw one more changeup the rest of that game, and then he's just kind of stuck throwing these fastballs over and over and over again against the lefties. And if you can't put those in precise spots against this caliber of hitters, which he couldn't, and these hitters are great, eventually guys are going to foul pitches off like Harris did over and over again. Olsen did, too, in that first rally until you get that hit. And it was exactly what happened. It was exactly what I was terrified of.
Yeah, no, it was definitely not the best for Severino. Of course, Michael Harris being one of those lefties he couldn't get out. I'll let the Braves guys talk about him a little bit more, but first we have another quick break. We'll be right back.
You know what doesn't make sense? Nasal hygiene isn't often part of our everyday routines, and it should be. Enter Navage Nasal Care. It's a game changer. Scotty, give us the play-by-play, please.
Kratz, Navage uses smooth saline flow and gentle patented nasal suction to clear nasal passages, and it works fast. Navage is drug-free and uses 99.9% pure saline salt pods with no medicinal side effects.
It's taken my breathing to a new level and my snoring down to an all-time low.
Start breathing easier today. Order the Navage Starter Pack. It comes with everything you need to get started. You'll love this. Our listeners can get a free cleaning kit as a gift, but only when you order through our exclusive URL, navage.com/foul, and use our promo code FOUL. Again, to order your Navage and free cleaning kit and for full product details, go to navage.com/foul. That's promo code FOUL at navage.com/foul.
So going into the break, we were listening to you guys talking about Michael Harris and some. And Michael Harris, other than maybe, I guess you could argue Schwellenbach versus Harris as to who was the hero of the game in this one. They were probably 1A and 1B. But Michael Harris has been basically out of his mind for about 2 weeks. And unfortunately for the Mets, that kind of came to fruition in this one. He has 5 home runs in the last 7 games. He was 3 for 3 tonight to open the game. And he had the fantastic diving catch in the 5th inning that was kind of like a hat tip moment as the Mets guys shake their head as I'm saying this. But no, I mean, and look, the Braves have had this up and down weird season as far as like who's been hot, who's not been, and they're so banged up. All those things that we talked about a number of times, but it's been Matt Olson at the forefront, and Michael Harris is now like basically being their second star the last couple of weeks. I don't know what you've seen, Steven, but it feels like that's a game-changing thing for Atlanta in the moment, and the timing of that is obviously very nice considering how good he was tonight.
Yeah, our fans will know, we've talked about this all year, that Matt Olson is the key to this team because they have so many right-handed hitters, and right-handed pitching can be a real problem for them. That's why I was worried about Severino tonight, because they're just so right-handed, and Matt Olson has had an up and down year. He's certainly not had the year he had last year, but he's been red hot for about 2 months. And then Michael Harris has been red hot for about 2 weeks now. And those being the basically only 2 lefties in the Braves lineup, those guys are critical against guys like Severino. Like you said, guys like him have trouble with lefties, but the Braves just don't have a ton of lefties. You know, Jared Kelenic has had a really disappointing second half. He's basically been benched for Ramon Laureano, who's a right-hander. So the only 2 lefties the Braves had, Ozzie Albies is back, but he's only batting right-handed. So literally the only 2 lefties the Braves have are Michael Harris and Matt Olson. And so when they play a guy like Severino, who can struggle with lefties at times, they're critical. And tonight I thought they were, I thought they had some of the best at-bats in the game, Michael Harris specifically. Mm-hmm. When those 2 guys go, and again, the people that listen to our show, we talked about this all year, especially with Matt Olson, when those guys go, the Braves are just so much more balanced. They can hit righties as well as they hit lefties. And tonight was a perfect example of that. Olsen and Harris both put up great at bat after great at bat Even though Olsen only had one hit, he had a walk. He was in 3-2 counts all night. It's part of getting Severino's pitch count up. Like those two guys had the best at bats of the night, and when that's the case for the Braves, their lineup goes to a different level.
Yeah, and it's crazy.
One of the reasons to watch on go ahead. I was going to say, one of the reasons to watch on YouTube is to get the reaction that you guys had to Jared Kelenich's name being mentioned on the podcast. If you were only listening, you should be listening just to see what the Mets guys. It was incredible.
Yeah, no, definitely not a pro Jared Kelenic podcast over here, and I'm still waiting for him to hurt us. Like, he hasn't hurt us yet. I'm waiting for it. It's going to happen at some point in our lifetime. He's going to do something that is unforgivable as a Mets fan. But yeah, it's just like annoying too because like the bottom of the order got a couple hits, they got on base a couple times, but it was frustrating to be beat by the top of the order when we know that's the only thing that can really hurt us. Like Giovanni Urshela, like these guys may have moments for the Braves, but to not be able to get Giovanni Urshela and Ramon Laureano and Orlando Arcia out as easy as they should be for the quality of player they are as compared to the top of the order, it was just like such a frustrating game to watch from the Mets fan side. And I know like the conversation is going to be, it's happening again. The Mets are doing it again. Like it's all starting to snowball, and it feels like it's so much on our shoulders right now. But at the same time, like I gotta say, it just felt like the Mets had to hit. Like at the end of the day, as bad as things could have been on the pitching side, you just have to hit, and the bats simply didn't show up. I just hope they do. They've been so great. It would be like ridiculous for Mets fans, us, anyone in general, to just count this team out right now because the bats had one off night when they've been putting up numbers against all these other teams all year long.
Totally. That's just the drama of Mets fans. Like we came on here doom and gloom in the beginning, but by the time tomorrow rolls around, when I wake up, I'm gonna be fully ready to dive back in again and have all the hope in the world. But it's just these itty bitty little bits of frustration. War. This is war. There's only just because you lose a battle does not mean you lose the war. That's a famous saying back there. But it was a little bit of the fact that this team just wasn't necessarily sharp at times. Like when that ball was misplayed by the combination of Alvarez Severino, really just Alvarez getting in Luis Severino's way on that Orlando Arcia dribbler that spurned the rally in the third inning. It was just like, oh man, like this defense has been so good for weeks now. I think that's been one of the Mets' unheralded calling cards. This amazing hot few months they've been on has been defense, which is always a huge backbone of David Stern's Milwaukee teams back in the day. So the fact that there was that misplay and then the floodgates immediately opened and there were 3 straight at bats where a guy reached second base and there was not an out record, you're like, okay, this is something that's just hasn't happened yet. And then you guys make some errors on the other side. Orlando Arcia misplayed a few balls, and both times the Mets just couldn't seem to get that big hit to do anything about it. And it was Pete Alonso once again in the game not getting a big hit this year. We talked about Marte before. Jesse Winker did not have very many good at bats today, and we kind of needed him as a guy like Schwellenbach just ran through us like a hot knife through butter. And it's just there was so many little moments the Mets could have gone back in the game, and we just couldn't get you guys to even break that sweat, even have that little bit of stress that you can carry the momentum into the next day. And that was what continued to frustrate me so badly.
It does seem to come out like when that little moment of stress is the way it's great that you put it that way, because it didn't really happen. Like it was like one little thing away from that happening in this game. Once the lead was built, you never had that panic moment. You never had that one plate appearance where it's like, all right, this might be the game right here, because the lead was semi-comfortable. The Braves did tack on probably timely all the way through. And yeah, the Mets got one across, but it was already 5-0. You're still within 4, and the Braves bullpen has been, knock on wood, lights out this year. So it didn't feel that nervy in the moment. But you're right. There were several times where it was maybe one at bat, one misplay away from getting interesting in a way that we didn't want it to be on our side of things. But obviously the Mets would have been probably feeling, because they have been playing so well for so long, I'm sure there is an inherent confidence in that clubhouse right now that like, hey, we're winning every night basically. And there's some of that just vibe that can kind of settle in, which is why it was so big. The Braves struck first and led this one to kind of not give them that extra fuel that I'm sure they already have kind of deep down for how hot they've been.
Yeah. And I'll say this, like I've obviously been doing a lot of research about the Mets, knowing that we were going to do this show. And if you told me that the Mets were going to have the year that they're having, and you just said, how is it going to happen? I would have told you that Pete Alonso went nuts for a year, and JD Martinez went nuts for a year, and Lindor went nuts, and Brandon Nimmo went nuts. And you actually, and like Francisco Alvarez, I would have assumed he was having just a monster season. And you actually look at like what's happened, it's been very different than I would have expected. Like JD Martinez has had a very average year. Pete Alonso, by his standards, has had a very average year. Francisco Alvarez, I think, has had a pretty average year. It's been guys like Vientos, Obviously, Lindor is incredible. The pitching come out of nowhere to be awesome. Like, it's been much different. I don't know how Mets fans feel. I'd be interested to hear y'all's perspective. But when I was doing the research of the team for the year, how good you guys have been, how it's actually played out has been very different than I would have guessed. If you asked me in March, if this team was going to be a playoff team, how it was going to happen, I don't think I would have picked how it's happened so far in 2024.
Yeah, I think what's been really great about this Mets team, and again, just a reassuring thing for the gloom and doom Mets fans out there that may be listening to this and are masochists and are like, let me hear 45 minutes about how we just lost to the Braves after I just watched that game. The team has stepped, like we said earlier, guys have stepped up at different points. Like Brandon Nimmo had a point in this year where at the All-Star break, thought he should have made the team. He went absolutely nuclear. He was disgusting. Pete Alonso's had some big moments where he's gotten hot. A couple weeks ago, he was on fire. Alvarez, like even Luis Angel Acuna stepping up this last week in Francisco Lindor's absence has been so huge. It's just about now who's going to be next. Can they do this all together? We really only got like a week or two, it feels like, of where the entire lineup was just so hot when we were playing the Rangers, and we had a little bit of that West Coast trip where they were just swinging the bat so well. But as a whole, it hasn't happened yet. And guys like JD Martinez, Jesse Winker has been a little bit cold, it feels like, the last few days. Need those guys to really step up if we want a chance to end the Braves season this week, if those games even get played. And it also felt like maybe this was the first time since the Lindor injury that it felt like we actually physically missed him.
Yeah, and another big thing is that JD Martinez going completely invisible over the last 2 weeks is now in a game like this where Starling Marte hits third and fails in multiple key spots. That's where you can feel a detriment. A tweet went like semi-viral on Mets Twitter yesterday that showed Daniel Vogelbach and JD Martinez side by side, and in one fewer at bat as Mets, Daniel Vogelbach had a higher batting average, a higher on-base percentage, and a higher slugging percentage than JD Martinez has done this year. So while JD's had some amazing moments and his impact on this team, I think, has been tremendous past what he's done on the field, his tutelage of Mark Vientos mainly sticking out. It just, him disappearing when they've really needed him most. For his last 32 or 33 at this point is bad. And you feel that trickle down because then this Mets line just gets a little bit shorter. And when the Mets line doesn't get shorter, because Carlos Mendoza is very reactionary, he likes to flip guys around all the time. If you get these like kind of dips instead of this, like, okay, after the 7-hitter, everything falls off, like what most teams wind up as. But now you have a situation where, again, like in a game for the Mets, they're 2, 3, 4, and 5 hitters, 0 hits. Like, you just can't have that. And then you get these little pieces of news about Lindor, these little crumbs left by the beat reporters about Lindor's running, Lindor's taking batting practice more aggressively. Then there was that bizarre tweet from Steve Gelbs in like the 5th inning when it was 5-0. Lindor has emerged from the clubhouse wearing cleats instead of sneakers. Like, what is this? Is this a fairy tale character that's going on? And then you look on the other side and you see the Braves, where 2 hours before this game, they announced that their best player that could have possibly returned this year, Austin Riley, was officially out. The hand wasn't healing the right way. And it's just like, the Mets kind of push themselves, motivate themselves more in these little emotional things, more in like the power of friendship, like Mark and I say sometimes, more in these like fun, happy, dancey vibes, where the Braves get the worst piece of news they've gotten in a month, and then they're just like full steam ahead. Let's beat the other team.
Well, and I'll say this, that Braves fans, I think, are pretty hardened to bad news at this point this year. Like, we wanted Riley to come back, and there was certainly a hope that he could, but in an honest moment, I don't think many Braves fans actually expected him to be back. I mean, it would have been fantastic, but like when I saw the news today, and Brad, I'll let Brad talk about this too, 'cause he might be different. When I saw the news today, I was like, yeah, I mean, that's just kind of what I thought. It wasn't like a crushing blow. When we got the news at first that he'd broken the wrist or the hammy or whatever it is, that was the crushing blow. The idea that he is not going to come back now, what you guys are dealing with Lindor is more of a daily drama than what we're dealing with Riley, at least from my perspective. Because for me, like Riley, I just kind of counted him out for for the rest of the year anyways. And if he came back, great. But, obviously with Lindor, it's just completely up in the air every day. You guys have no idea what it's going to be.
Yeah, if we had done our regular Braves only show tonight, we would have spent 15 minutes on Riley probably, and it is what it is. But you're right that it did seem like we were all holding our breath, but it was like maybe he can come back at the earliest for the Royal Series and be maybe diminished in the playoffs. It wasn't like we were holding out for Austin Riley to be Austin Riley in all capital letters. He's been out for so long, and there was the expectation it was like going to be close the whole time. So it's not as gut punchy as any of the other injuries have been, the big ones. But as Lindor is about to come back, and look, obviously it would be easier for the Braves to win if Lindor didn't play. I love Lindor. Lindor rocks. I mean, it's not maybe popular to say that. He's awesome. Like he's very good. If he wants to come back on Friday, that's probably better for the Braves, but alas, we'll leave it there for now. All right, we'll have more to kind of spin forward on the rest of this series, provided it happens on time, as we teased earlier. But first, a word from our guys at Foul Territory.
All right, this one's for the dudes. You know how scary it can get when you're going for a close shave below the belt, and that's why FT trusts Manscaped for those sensitive areas. Their newest package is the Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, including the star of the show, the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra.
Their 5th generation trimmer features 2 interchangeable next-gen skin-safe blade heads, a standard one for taking a little off the top, and a new foil blade to go smooth wherever your heart desires.
Manscaped even threw in 2 free gifts to their Performance Package 5.0, the Manscaped Boxers and the Shed Travel Bag. Want more wet products? Say no more. Manscaped has a new buff bundle. This bundle includes their signature silicone scrubber plus body wash, so ditch your nasty loofah and grab a taste of freshness.
Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped with our exclusive offer. Get 20% off plus free shipping when you go to manscaped.com and use code FOUL20.
And we're back. All right. We actually just got some news coming out of the break from Mets beat reporter, friend of the podcast over here at Mets'd, Tim Healy. And it's about the game tomorrow, which I guess that's a great way for us to end here as well. Good timing on that, Tim. Carlos Mendoza said David Stearns hasn't heard anything regarding changes for Mets Braves tomorrow. Sounds like they'll just show up like normal. Hope to get the game in as scheduled. Steven, it sounds like you are going to be sitting in the rain tomorrow, waiting for this game to never happen.
That's right. Poncho season, like Brad says. Poncho season, baby.
Buckle down.
I was looking at weather reports today, and there was a line that I tweeted from AccuWeather that said potential for life-threatening flooding. Have you guys, like, just living in the Atlanta area, taken any precautions for what could be allegedly be this kind of cataclysmic rainstorm ahead?
Oh boy, that sounds stronger than I would have thought. But I did see that tweet from you. I had a bit of a chuckle and more of that like nervous chuckle. You know, it's like, all right, hopefully not life-threatening for not only Steven, who will be in the building, but even for me at home. I don't really want to deal with life-threatening flooding in my life. But yeah, I mean, I think we're in agreement. It seems like that it's probably not going to happen tomorrow. Should we talk about the game as if it's going to happen? Should we preview Chris Sale and David Peters? I don't know. Do you want to talk about the matchup at all, or is like just kind of push it to the side?
The Braves have the advantage. Chris Sale's better than David Peterson. I think
that is accurate. Chris Sale is pretty good. Chris Sale is the Cy Young frontrunner for a reason. And by the way, an extra day of rest. He didn't look his 100% best self in his last start, which I think we probably understand was the reason he didn't pitch today, is that they wanted to give him an extra day to kind of get it together. And he's old. He hasn't pitched as many innings in a long time. But I say that every time he's had a little bit of like a misstep this year, the next start's been absolutely lights out. So if this game happens, I expect it to be good. Maybe it'll be a 3-2 game, and we'll see which way that goes. But as I mentioned earlier, the Braves have been awesome when he pitches, and that's not only because of him, but it's mostly because of him.
Listen, over here on the Messed Up podcast, we like to say the Braves have voodoo magic. I don't know what Anthopoulos does over there. As a fellow Greek guy myself, I know my yaya had some secret powers that I haven't gotten passed down to me yet. But maybe he can just push the rain clouds away a little bit, get these games in. Because, I can't wait until Monday for the rest of these games. I can't do it.
Even waiting until 7:20 tonight was horrible. Just festering all day.
None of us want Monday. Nobody wants Monday on either team, either podcast, either fan base. No one wants to deal with Monday. Basically, and it may not be winner take all by then. There's a chance it gets settled before Monday if that happens. But we all know it's going to happen. If it happens on Monday, it's going to mean everything. It's going to be the whole season on Monday if that's what happens. We all know it.
I will say this: the Diamondbacks, the Diamondbacks could just wet the bed all week. And
that's why I brought it up. It may not matter on Monday. Maybe. We'll see.
I mean, you guys are nice guys, but I don't want the Braves to make the playoffs, so I'm hoping it's us and the Diamondbacks.
I understand. No, I understand.
The Braves, as long as the Braves are one of them. So yeah, the Diamondbacks could wet the bed all week. So that could happen. Like these games might not matter. I mean, they probably will because that's how it goes. But there's a chance. Like the Diamondbacks have not been playing well. Like they got that horrible loss on Sunday. They lost last night. They got Logan Webb tonight. It's not impossible that these games are better.
I don't mean to go live spoil, but they if you guys haven't seen, they're currently down 7-0 in the third inning. Now that may change. They just blew an 8-0 lead. Was that yesterday? Yeah, 8-0 lead, or yesterday or Sunday, one of those games. So nothing's safe, but they're not 7-0 in the third inning right now as we're talking. So
yeah, just have to shout out Mets legend Michael Conforto. Hit a 425-foot home run for the second time in 2 nights against the Diamondbacks to push this ahead. But there's a chance out of all 4 of these teams over like a very minuscule 2-week sample. It seems like that Diamondbacks team might be playing relatively the worst ball. So yeah, maybe the series winds up being nothing. But I think that even if the series winds up being nothing, there's something inside of all the Mets fans right now, and I'm sure all of the Mets players, where you won't really feel that satisfied unless you get over this hump and can beat this Braves team, because there's no joy in victory without it, even if you make the playoffs and lose these games.
Yeah, and I mean, I know us as Mets fans, we definitely have a different perspective of these next couple games coming up here. Me and James are not typically gloom and doom Mets fans. I don't think we even are right now. I think we're going to be completely fine as soon as we stop finishing recording this and wake up tomorrow morning and it's whatever's going on in New York City. But yeah, I mean, this has been a really good crossover episode with Hammer Territory and Mets'd Up. We want to know your guys' final thoughts. How much better do you guys feel after seeing tonight's game as opposed to coming into tonight?
I'll go first. I think that obviously just the sheer math of it, you got to feel much better, especially with Sale lined up the next day, whenever that happens. At the same time, my rational brain, I'm a little bit more of a pessimistic doomsdayer than some. The Braves are still behind in this, not in the series, but in the overall picture of things. They still have to win at least one of the next 2. And even if they win one of the next 2, they're still going to be behind the Mets. So the pressure's, in my mind, still, like we started this conversation, I think the pressure's still on the Braves. It's maybe lessened by the win today. They don't now have to be perfect the next 2 days, but they do have to at least get one, and preferably, by all accounts, they got to get both. So I feel better, but I don't feel good, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I never feel good about anything. I mean,
it's nuts as Braves. Nuts.
That does sound like Steven. Yeah.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, but like if you've like what we've gone through in the postseason the last couple of years, just getting dog walked by the Phillies 2 times in a row off 100-win teams. The Falcons are the Falcons. The Hawks are like Atlanta sports fans.
Oh, so sorry for
believe
them.
it or not. Yeah, there is a level of always kind of dread, and that's what Brad's talking about a little bit about. He's always kind of, not always, but we're both a little bit more pessimistic than some. But I do feel better. I mean, once the game was over, I felt better. Of course, having Sale tomorrow. I mean, if the game gets played, we don't know if the game's going to get played, but having Sale tomorrow is probably what I feel most comfortable about, just because he's Chris Sale. He's going to win the Cy Young. Like, the Braves just play extremely well when he pitches. So I feel great about that whenever that game gets played. Yeah, I guess we probably are feel a lot better than you guys. You guys are obviously dealing with some demons from the past for coming to Truist Park and losing games that the Braves fans don't have to deal with. So yeah, I mean, after this win tonight, having Sale tomorrow, I think we're definitely feeling better than you guys are at the moment.
Yeah, just wondering now, how many consecutive division titles does a fan base need to feel to be confident? Because is it 17? Is it 18? Like, what actually had to have happened in your guys' lifetime?
Hey, streak's over now.
Because from this perspective, I can't even comprehend the things that you're saying of not feeling confident.
Mets fans, we're a different kind of sick in the head.
Yeah, but when
I understand,
the Braves have had so many postseason blowups, like so many.
Oh no, we make the playoffs every year and don't win the World Series.
So many. I don't want to hear it. So many.
I liked you guys until I heard this.
It doesn't matter. If you don't win the ring, it doesn't matter. So.
Guys, thank you so much for listening to this crossover episode between Hammer Territory and Mets'd Up. Make sure to subscribe, share, and rate 5 stars on both Hammer Territory, Mets'd Up, and the entire Foul Territory Network. AJ Przinsky, Cameron Maben, and Scott Braun host Foul Territory tomorrow at 1 p.m. Eastern. We'll see you guys at the end of this series if it ever plays.
Peace out, guys.
Thanks, guys.